Marvin Corea. Have you ever felt that you're carrying baggage from the past? It's holding you back, slowing you down. Maybe? Yes? Some people? I've had some baggage, or maybe I do have baggage still. In one particular occasion, many years ago, it was February 1980, almost 40 years ago. That's wow. I'm old. It was, the setting is El Salvador. My parents were living there. I was 5 years old at the time. My brother was 3, or almost 5 years old. My father had just lost his job because of a labor union strike, and the company shut down. My uncle had returned from Saudi Arabia from some work that he had done overseas, and there was civil unrest in El Salvador at the time. A lot of protests. There's a big difference, class difference between the 1% that were very rich and the 99% of us that were not. Many protests, a lot of buses getting burned. My father saw that this was an opportunity, especially from when my uncle arrived. He asked my father, why don't we go to the United States? Given that he didn't have a job, he had a family, his wife and my brother and I, he said, yes, let's do it. They had some trials and tribulations coming up from El Salvador, taking buses through all of Central America, getting to Mexico. And one particular story he told me about, they were being chased by some robbers. On one occasion, they went into a forest to avoid these robbers. And on one occasion, they jumped into a river to avoid them. They were drawing breaths through straws because they did not want to get captured by these armed men. That's not the unfortunate part. The unfortunate part is that they lost the money that they had in the river as they were hiding from these robbers. They got out of the river after they left. My father was in terrible pain because they had walked dozens or probably even hundreds of miles already. He had very severe blisters in his feet, and my father at one point told my uncle, go ahead and go without me. My uncle was fine. He was like, no, you're crazy. I'm not leaving you. They ended up trading shoes, and they went on, eventually being able to cross the border. This was February of 1980. We stayed back because we didn't know the risk. He told us to stay back, but eventually my uncle came back for us. Luckily they had a little bit more cash, so we rode by bus, my mother, uncle, my brother and I, up to the border of Mexico. There, we stayed overnight at a hotel or motel, and the next day or that night, my uncle brought some tubes, just like you would go on a river to enjoy a nice tubing experience here in Florida. That was my first tubing experience. my mother and uncle took us to the river. For those that don't know, it's the Rio Grande.
Yeah.
My mother told me that she hadn't told, or my uncle didn't have the knowledge that she didn't know how to swim. He took my brother and I across the river, and she was lagging behind, but she decided not to cross because she didn't want to get taken by the current. So my uncle decided to leave my brother and I. I was 5 years old, my brother was 3 years old at the time. On the one side of the river, he told us, do not cry, do not say anything if you want to see your father. I don't know what was going on at the time in my mind, but I imagine we were scared to death. We were like squirrels trying to cross the street, not trying to get run over by a car. And he went back to get my mother across the river and came back with her. Now, I was 5 years old at the time. I don't remember really anything at all from that point. Just what my parents told me. But that past that happened and the trials and tribulations that my parents went through to get here, I can't imagine. For me, I've been lucky. One of the things is, first of all, my parents told the school, you're not going to English as a second language. They were insisting that we go to ESL because we did not know how to speak English. Luckily, they accepted us as regular English, and now here I am. But my point in this story is this. There are things that happen in your past that can affect you. Luckily for me, they affected me, but in a positive manner. My parents were strong enough to bring us here and move us forward. So don't get haunted by the past. Let the past go and embrace the future, which is what I think I've done. Mr. Contest.
Timers, 1 more minute, please. Judges, fill out your ballots.